To begin, we would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is a traditional and unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, Mohawk, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst nations. On behalf of the School of Community and Public Affairs, thank you for attending this panel to discuss the nature of institutional racism in Montreal. If you are here with us tonight, it is because you recognize that there are, unmistakably, elements in our society that perpetuate conditions that privilege one group at the expense of others. Racism and white supremacy are at the root of a number of our society's chronic injustices. Sexual violence against Indigenous women, racial profiling of young Black men, terrorist attacks on religious institutions. And they affect the sense of well-being and belonging of every citizen. We have organized this panel to enable members of the Montreal community to engage with the subject of institutional racism, and we are delighted that our panelists have agreed to volunteer their time to be with us here today to discuss the topic. Not only are they experts and sources of important knowledge on the subject, but they are also advocates for freedom, respect, and opportunity. They are Eric Schraag, co-founder of the Immigrant Workers Center, Fo Niemi, executive director of the nonprofit civil rights group, Center for Research Action on Race Relations, Dr. Myrna Lashley, assistant professor at McGill University's Department of Psychiatry, and Haroun Bouezi, co-founder and co-president of the Association for Muslims and Arabs Beneits in Quebec. Lastly, we'd like to introduce our moderator, Lachlan Medill, host of MaTV's Urban Nations. Our panel discussion will be 60 minutes, and we respectfully request that comments and questions be saved for the end of the discussion. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Hello. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. This is a very important topic, with all the things that are going on south of the border and here in Quebec just recently. This is going to be a discussion. We're just going to try and have some, a dialectic here. So first, I'd just like to get everyone here at the tables here to kind of introduce themselves and how that work relates to institutionalized racism here. So I don't know who wants to start. The full.
That I work at the Immigrant Workers Center, and one of the principles we have is that workers who are involved with us speak for themselves. But because I was a former academic and director of the school here, I decided after 4.5 years being away, it'd be nice to come back and see everybody. So I decided to say yes for a change. So we talked, Tess and Marco and I and 2 or 3 other people for a couple of months together, and we came up with the idea of setting up a center that could be a safe space for immigrant workers to come to and share their experiences and try to work out strategies about how to deal with the issues that they face.
I'm in my 2nd or 3rd career, and I got involved in institutionalized racism and fighting this the day I was born, because I was born Black. And that's not something, I'm not being funny, but that's a fact. When it became a problem is when I came to Canada, because I really didn't know anything about racism until I got here. And that was a bad thing, because I didn't have the tools necessary to fight when someone would say something absolutely idiotic to me. If you don't have the tools to work with racism, you can suffer severe mental health difficulties. And I'm here to tell you that I did. I had to explain to people, I spent a lot of time explaining to people about institutionalized racism, and that you're primarily a white college, and how come I never see any pictures of any of the student body who's other than white on your wall? What is that? And I remember someone saying to me, well, do we have to think about it every time? I said, yeah. The one thing I will say to you, regardless of your color, regardless of your pigmentation, regardless of your background, don't let anybody get in your way.
I'm Haroun Bouazi, co-president of the Association of Muslims and Arabs for a Secular Quebec, or Laïcité in Quebec. We act in 4 different fields. Third one is actually dealing with public policies, so we try to pressure our governments to do what we think is the right thing. And the fourth thing is actually create links, and we really think that fighting racism, and we do work mainly on Islamophobia, but we actually work on other kind of oppression systems, so either other kinds of racism, negrophobia, or hate against indigenous, or homophobia, or sexism. We really think that we have to create as many links as possible to create this wave of resistance together.
But one of the things that I think that we need to understand more and more is that law and social justice, they go together, but we have to use all means available. We call it in the Constitution of the United States, call it all means necessary and proper in order to achieve change in a non-violent fashion. Change, not only change mindset, attitudes, and beliefs, but most importantly, to change institutions with durable and sustainable results, so that it will be a legacy not for this generation, for the next.
That was a nice segue into the next topic I want to get into, and that's going to be to talk about justice and policing in the community. I think everyone here has worked with within the justice system and within the police here, and I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on how this, why minorities may not feel comfortable in the justice system and with police, and where this this insecurity comes from.
So I think 3 things where I think we have problems. One is about the numbers. So first, the police actually don't give us numbers, and we'll talk about intersectionality very fast. When a woman is actually subject to harassment, she has to choose, and it's, I think, the second violence after the real crime she actually had to be subject to. She has to choose between being subject to gender violence or racial violence. And we think that it's time to actually start to have a bit more complexity than just one choice in these things. Second, for these numbers specifically, and I'll actually start to give a list, and you will see how bad it is. Now, I don't know if you heard a couple, 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago, there is a woman, and I know that the CRAR actually did a press release about it, a woman that was pregnant, wearing a scarf in Rosemont, and was attacked by two young people. And she actually fell, they ran away, and the police told us it's not a hate crime. Because they didn't steal anything, obviously, but because when they did that, they actually didn't scream something that was hatred. And they were young, they didn't know what they did, right? This is the reality. So how do we actually see the police are actually, so at every level, numbers, profiling, and actually protecting these people that are actually fighting racism at every level, they're part of the problem.
The first, we work with people who are employed via placement agencies. And entry point for most immigrant workers is through placement agencies. When you come here on Emploi Quebec, we'll say, if you want to find a job, go to a placement agency. So what does a placement agency do? Basically, they ship you off to a company that has no responsibility for you, and you work your butt off for minimum wage, and you have no protection because there's a triangular relationship between the placement agency and the company, and no one knows who the hell is responsible. So we've structured racism into the labor market. And this is a concept that's really invisible to most people, the way that race and gender are structured in the labor market. So who does domestic work and who does work in all of the service sector, people who are basically invisible. And the Harper government had put a 4-year limit on the temporary foreign workers program. And they all came up to the end of their 4 years and are going to be sent home. The employer wanted to keep them because they can't find skilled Quebec workers to do this work. Also, no one in Quebec wants to do evening and night shifts. And the union reluctantly stepped up after we got involved, and we won. So 32 of the 34 workers who we worked with got permanent status here. So with organizing, you can actually win. And we believe that that's the source, that you have to build organization, you have to bring workers in, help them build their own leadership, and build on-the-ground resistance to these kinds of oppressive forms of labor.
The police are us. They reflect us and we reflect them. There are some very good policemen, some excellent policemen, and there's some rotten apples. And that's a fact, just as they are with us. So I have a hard time, with all due respect, doing a wholesale condemnation of any people. But I want to talk a bit about how that ties into the whole concept of institutionalized racism. We often think about institutionalized racism as pertaining to a physical institution. A lot of people do that. We are the institutionalized racism. Every time we don't stand up, every time we turn away and say, it's your problem, it's not mine. Every time we see someone being harassed and we hold our heads down and we walk away, we become part of that problem. We become part of that institutionalized behavior. I mean, no disrespect to anyone, but if we're going to change it, let's face some facts. And if we are going to change it, it's time that we've talked about intersectionality. It's time that we become each other's keeper. I cannot spend my time saying, I want to get into the area of academia, I wanted to get into the halls of academia, and see somebody else there who cannot make it, who, not because they don't have the intelligence, not because sometimes they don't have the money, but we know, and research has shown, that in academia, if we want to look at that, certain people get promoted and other people don't. We know that certain people are more prone to be given tenure than others, because those people are in pain, and if we do not set up our institutions to support each other, we're doing more harm than good. And so when we look at institutions, remember, we are the institution.
I've been involved in a lot of legal action involving police. But where I find more problematic, and that we don't talk enough about in this province, is the underrepresentation and the racial exclusion of people of color from the bench. We have at this moment 5 black judges and 0 Aboriginal judges out of more than 550 judges at the federal and provincial jurisdiction, including municipal courts. That's not normal, and that's not Quebec and Canada in 2017. And the Justice Minister is oblivious and a little bit clueless when talking about diversity on the bench. And why is that? Because the judge is basically the final arbitrator and adjudicators in any case it comes before the courts. So it's the Crown prosecutor that has to raise that additional element, and often, and by the way, our Crown prosecutor is very white. And contrary to Ontario, there are no directives from the Attorney General of this province as to how to deal with hate crime. And that's a problem that Haroon encounters, because the police gets all the flack, but it's the criminal justice system and the rest of it that should have gotten the flack for not acting enough to, among other things, in dealing with sexual violence as well, because we hear the same thing about a lot of women who are victims of sexual violence and survivors of violence, and complain that a lot of the prosecutors don't understand it. All right, so I think we have to look at it holistic, but I tend to go for the top where decisions are made. And the top is, we want more color among the judges. All those people create systemic obstacles in fair access to the criminal justice system, and that's what I'd like to possibly lay it out there for people to think about.
What I'd like to know is how, looking to the future, can can we be more able to get more inclusion and participation within the system if we are the system, you know, for instance, having more Aboriginal lawmakers and people on the bench and you know, in law enforcement, and people who are able to help within labor. So if we could wrap that up with what your thoughts are on how that could go ahead in the future.
The fact is that unless you see yourself reflected, it doesn't give you the impetus you need to go forward. It doesn't send a message that there is a place for you at the table. And I am always astounded when a black child says to me, "We've got people like you." Make sure that all our institutions reflect the citizens that they serve. And if they don't, stand up and ask, why not? Fight back, or it will never change. And 10 years from now, I'll be dead, but we'll be back here with the same thing, asking the same bloody questions, getting the same bleeding answers.
The most inspiring part of it and the potential for change are the workers who come forward to fight back. People who have everything to lose and they're willing to stand up and fight. But I really also believe that unless there's sustained, planned collective action, what I mean by planned is you have some kind of systematic way of bringing people together and talking about how you can move forward. Unless that happens, we're not going to move forward.
Last thing, and this is our role as citizens, we really have to stand up. You know, when we see hate, obviously that's the minimum. But also we have to actually be part of all this action, and as I said in the beginning, be part of all the other struggle of other groups. You know, sometimes we see in the anti-racist movement a lot of segmentation, right? It's mine. You know, Islamophobia, it's mine. Negrophobia, it's mine. And at least already, if we know a bit, you know, about intersectionality, we see that it doesn't make any sense anyways. So there is rules, as I said in the beginning, but we have to stand up together and to work together, not invisibilize, etc., etc. Okay, but we have to, because if we don't work together, we're actually doomed.
So, we have to be consistent, the discourse and the practice. We have to walk the walk, walk the talk, and more important, we have to call out and ask for accountability.
Hello? Yes? There we go. Hi. Thank you guys for all of the work that you've done and that you're doing. I really respected it, and I'm kind of in awe. I want to ask you guys about how do you stay optimistic and how do you not get too cynical?
I surround myself with people. I have people like folk that I can call and I can say, I have a filthy mouth. That helps a lot too. Well, I was in the Navy, of course I have a filthy mouth. But I have people that with whom I can be honest, with whom I can be myself. And that's very, very important. It's not going to be easy. But if you don't want to get to the end of your days with things being the way they were the day you exited your mother's womb, you keep pushing. Never let anybody tell you that you can't. As painful as it is, as hard as it is, don't let anybody get in your way.
Marginalized people's rights. I was just wondering what your take on those actions were, and whether you think that they were like an effective means to enact change. Because I noticed that a lot of the discourse that was going on was more so about like working with these organizations, and I was wondering about your approaches to more confrontational tactics like Black Lives Matters this year.
I don't consider Black Lives Matter confrontational. I think that's very essential. It's basically Solidinsky, community organizing with the possessed disadvantage. So I never cast a judgment on that. Where I find it's more possibly critical that we have to be very, very forward-looking about is protest movements tend to peter out unless they have strong leadership, strong structure, and resources. I think intersectionality it's okay, but I like to see the practices of institutionality and intersectionality that will fundamentally change it for the future.
Well, that concludes our discussion this evening. Thanks to everyone that came out, and especially our esteemed guests. I hope we all can go home with something to think about tonight. Thanks for having me.
My skin glows in the dark, shines in the light, so good.